So I just wanted to put together a quick video for basic Westlake disassembly and maintenance. So to start with, the tools you're going to need: a small Phillips head, PH1 this is, a very small Allen key that will become apparent later. You're not actually going to use it as an Allen key, but just to hold back a pin within the side plate. A paper clip. Then you can also, as has been pointed out to me, use the primer punch that comes with the revolver, and a good hollow ground flathead bit. This comes from the Wheeler fat wrench kit. That's essential for not damaging your screw heads. So we'll start by removing the grips. These out. It's my first time doing anything like this on camera, so if it's a little bit awkward, that is why. Trying to get everything in frame. So we'll just work these off. Okay, one goes off to one side. Okay, so you know you've got your 3 screws for the side plate. Also worth noting here, you've got your adjustment screw for your trigger pull there, if you want to make that adjustment. So let's just lay this into the hole. Let's just get that lined up again. Really hard doing this from behind the camera. Just unscrew these. Just be careful you don't scratch up your nice stainless finish while you're doing it. There we go. Last one. Now with the side plate, I've seen a lot of people get pliers in, try and jimmy it out and all sorts of... You don't really need to do that. What you do need to do, and what I like to do, hold on to the hammer spring there, just give the frame a good tap, and that loosens up that plate, and then you can just take that off, and then you've got access to the inner workings of the revolver. So once you've got the side plate off the revolver, this is where sort of it gets interesting, a little bit fiddly. You know, you've got this under spring tension. There's an O-ring on the, sorry, not an O-ring, a washer on the end there that you don't want to lose. The pin that the hammer sits in is quite shallow, so I like to sort of put a bit of pressure down on there. First of all, I'll take the hand off, which just sits on the pin here on the back of that, back of the trigger, and then I like to try and work the trigger out and just put my finger under and pull that towards me. And again, there's another spring there that's under tension. I've got a slightly modified spring, so from M9 Engineering, which I highly recommend. Here we go. So that's off there. So there's a pin there. That's not actually built into the frame. So normally this hammer comes out pretty much of its own accord. But obviously it's in there pretty good at the moment.
Several hours later.
So there we go. So I've just pushed up on the back of that spring. Got to be careful not to bend where it goes into the hammer here. Once you've got the washer off the back, that spring will come off, and then you can pull your mainspring guide, if you will, off. So again, you see that goes in that orientation, and then we can wiggle the hammer off of its recess there. And get that out, like he says, not being able to wiggle the hammer off of its recess. There we go, let's pull the pin. And so we've got the pin out, and now we just pull the hammer out the top. Just be very careful here not to allow, if I can get that to focus, this to slide out. This, I forget the name of it now, but there's a plunger and a spring in there, and it's a real pain to get back together, or so I am told. And essentially this is as far as I would take most disassembly. You've got your trigger spring here that you can take off, your transfer bar here, which is effectively your safety. So when that's up, that transfers the energy of the hammer fall into the firing pin. When it's down, it won't, and you won't get the hammer won't make contact with the pin, and the gun won't go off. And then here you've got obviously your cylinder release latch. In order to get the transfer bar out, you've got to remove the cylinder release latch via that single screw there. That can be a bit fiddly to get back in as well, because you've got a small screw in the back there, so only really for a proper deep clean. I haven't had the bolt out at any point yet, so I don't really know where I'd go about doing that, or why you would in fact, but it seems absolutely fine as it stands. So in a second we'll go through some reassembly tips and tricks. Okay, so once you've done what you need to do inside your revolver, you've disassembled it as far as you want to disassemble it. The fiddly parts of reassembly are getting that spring back on. You just need to sort of push it back into position. It's going to be a little different because I'm using the lighting spring here, so I'm going to have to sort of work that into position into the notch of the trigger. But I mean that's just a case of getting that tail into position, getting the front in position, and pushing it on, because it's sprung both ends. So fiddly but perfectly doable. The things you really need to know about for this reassembly are, so your mainspring on the guide, the little hole through the guide, that's where your paper clip comes in. However the way you choose to do it, you need to compress this spring. It's particularly difficult, pain in the backside. I like to put it down on a microfiber cloth, that way push down, compress the spring, and then with my third, fourth or fifth hand push the paper clip in. So not the easiest thing in the world, but it is doable. And finally, the thing you need to know about is that little Allen key there goes into the side plate. So what you've got here, if I put my finger there, is a plunger in the side plate. So this plunger needs to be compressed before you can get it back in the gun. So what I tend to do is compress that, stick the Allen key in the hole, poke it all the way through a little too far, and then I'll put it down on a flat surface like the table here, all the way down, so then it doesn't protrude further than is necessary, doesn't get in the way during reassembly. So tips and tricks aside, the first thing I like to do reassembling the frame here is put the trigger back in. So it's going to be a little fiddly. You need to make sure that this hole here aligns with that pin there. This pin here aligns with the transfer bar hole here. Then if you're using the light and trigger spring, it's a bit fiddlier because the design needs to make sure it's in on that ledge here. So you can come up from the bottoms, hook that in, try and hook that pin in over the top at the same time. So I've got that pin in at the top there. Now I need to try and align that transfer. Oh, and So the only thing I've got now is to try and very carefully persuade this spring into position like that without scratching the frame. And then we should just be able to push. There we go, let's wiggle the transfer bar in. So we've got the spring in, we've got the pin in. That pin's, as I said, not captive, so you may just be able to push it in as one unit, but let's just wiggle this spring, wiggle the trigger, try and get this transfer bar aligned, and you'll know when it goes in. It's just fiddly getting this properly lined up, but it will go in. There we go, and there's a nice click there. So now you see your trigger moves the transfer bar, your spring's in the right place there, not poking out. So
you sure about that?
Yeah, hang on. There we go. So spring's in the right place in the transfer bar. If you're going to pull the trigger like I just did, hold it down, because otherwise it'll jump out of place. But yeah, there you go. Right, next stage is your hammer and your spring. So I like to arrange them together. So I will get my washer and pop that into position in the frame like so. I'll get my hammer the right way round, hopefully. Start dropping that in and then guide the top of that spring into the recess and the hammer. And then you'll have to work your trigger a little bit. Adjust the angle on that hammer, work your trigger. Just try and get it to, there we go, to feed in. And then once you've got it sort of there, so that's where you want the trigger against the rest of the hammer. Get your pin, drop your pin in from above, and give it a little wiggle until your hammer doesn't wiggle, until you know. It might be a little bit trial and error just to get this lined up. Maybe a little bit of upwards pressure on the hammer, but you just want to work that in until you're all lined up. Come on. There we go. So you heard that. That's dropped in now. The hammer's got no wiggle. We're happy. These parts are all in place. Okay, so what you can do, what I like to do at this point is put my side plate back on. Well, actually, no, that would be foolish. What you want to do now is put the hand on. So that literally lays on to the other side of the pin that goes into the transfer bar. It's a really loose fit, but it just goes in there. And then just position it so it's through the gap in the frame, and then you know it's in the right place. And now your side plate goes back on. Hopefully it goes on without any resistance. Then we can pop our screws back in. And at this point, whilst holding the plate down, I like to remove that Allen key that holds the plunger in place. Now we can get these screws done up. I do them all kind of loosely to start with. And just go around and gently snug them all up, one by one. Okay, so you're happy. And now what you do is put some pressure on your spring here and pull your paper clip out. There we go. So now we can function check it, so we know single action works fine, double action works fine, and then it's just a case of popping the grips back on with the 2 screws as per. But yeah, that's it.